When I decided to rent out my apartment, I thought it would be simple, just a few meetings, some paperwork, and I'd be on my way. But the day I walked in with the new tenants, I saw something that broke my heart in a way I'll never forget. Stay with me till the end, because what happened next changed everything I thought I knew about my own family. My name is Ashley Collins. I'm 28 years old, and for the past 5 years, I've been living in Nashville, Tennessee. I've always been the responsible one in the family, the person people could rely on. I work hard, keep my word, and don't let people down. When my company offered me a big promotion in another city, I couldn't say no. It was the kind of opportunity one had been working toward for years. Instead of selling my apartment, I thought renting it out would be a smart move. It would bring in some extra money and give me something to come back to if I ever return. So, I started looking for tenants. Family-wise, I've always been close to my younger sister, Brianna. She's 25, fun, and full of energy, the kind of person who lights up a room. But between us, there's always been a little competition. She's engaged to Caleb Foster, a man who everyone else seems to adore. I never had a reason to dislike him. He's charming, confident, and he treats Brianna like a prize. At least, that's what I thought. In the weeks before my move, I noticed Brianna acting. She was a bit distant, and whenever I asked about wedding plans, she gave short answers or changed the subject. Caleb also stopped coming to family dinners. I figured they were just stressed with all the planning. I eventually found a nice couple to rent the place, Tessa and Brandon Hughes. They seemed like the perfect tenants, polite, excited, and eager to move in. We arranged one final visit, so they could measure the rooms before moving day. I planned to meet them there after finishing some packing. That morning, I got a text from my neighbor. She casually mentioned that she had seen someone coming and going from my apartment lately, someone who wasn't me. I brushed it off, thinking maybe she saw a friend of mine helping me pack. But the comment stuck in my head. When I arrived with Tessa and Brandon, I immediately noticed something. My apartment door was unlocked, which was strange because I'm careful about locking it every single time. Inside, I could hear the faint sound of laughter mixed with the clinking of glasses. My stomach tightened. I stepped inside, ready to apologize to whoever it was for accidentally walking in. But when I turned the corner into the kitchen, my world stopped. It was Brianna and Caleb, sitting at my table like they owned the place. In the weeks leading up to my move, I couldn't help but notice something was off with Brianna. She wasn't calling as much, and when I did reach out, her replies were short and distracted. She'd cancel lunch plans last minute or say she was too busy to meet. It wasn't like her. We'd always been close, even if there was a quiet undercurrent of competition between us. Caleb, too, had started pulling away. He used to be a regular at our Sunday family dinners, always cracking jokes and helping my mom clear the table. But lately, he'd send excuses through Brianna. Work's been crazy, or I'm not feeling well. It struck me as odd, but I told myself they were just caught up in the whirlwind of wedding plans. With my own move coming up, I didn't have the energy to overthink. The new tenants I'd found, Tessa and Brandon Hughes, were a young couple in their late 20s. From the first meeting, they seemed like a perfect fit for my apartment, friendly, polite, and genuinely excited about moving in. Tessa worked as a graphic designer, and Brandon was in IT. They told me they'd been looking for a place that felt like home, instead of just another rental. I liked them right away. We agreed they'd come by one more time before the move-in date to measure furniture and get a better feel for the space. I put it on my calendar and kept packing up my own things. One afternoon, while I was hauling boxes from my bedroom to the living room, my neighbor Mrs. Thompson stopped me in the hallway. She's lived across from me for years, and she's the kind of person who notices everything. Not in a nosy way, just in a friendly, I care about what's going on around here kind of way. I didn't realize you had a roommate, she said casually, leaning on her cane. I paused, confused. I don't. Oh, she said, looking puzzled. Well, maybe I'm mistaken, but I've seen someone coming and going from your apartment a few times lately. A man, I think. Tall, dark hair. Drove a silver car. I thought maybe it was your boyfriend or something. I forced a little laugh, trying not to show that my stomach had just tightened. Nope, no boyfriend. Probably someone helping me pack. She nodded, though she didn't look entirely convinced. Well, I just wanted to mention it. You know me. I like to keep an eye out for my neighbors. I thanked her and went back inside, brushing the comment off. Maybe a friend had dropped by when I wasn't around, or maybe she'd mistaken my place for another unit. Still, as I packed away another box of books, I couldn't quite shake her words. It was probably nothing, but a small, uneasy thought lodged itself in the back of my mind, refusing to leave. The day of the final visit with Tessa and Brandon started like any other. I'd been running errands, tying up loose ends before the move. We agreed to meet at my apartment so they could measure the living room and check where their larger furniture might fit. I was feeling good about it until we reached my door. It was slightly ajar. That immediately set off a red flag in my mind. I am meticulous about locking up, especially with boxes already packed inside. I paused for a moment, thinking maybe I had left it unlocked by mistake earlier, but the more I thought about it, the less sense it made. I pushed the door open slowly, and the faint sounds of laughter floated through the hallway. There was also the unmistakable clink of glasses. My brows knitted together. I wasn't expecting anyone. The tenants weren't supposed to be here alone, and none of my friends had a key. Tessa and Brandon stepped in behind me, both looking just as puzzled. The smell of Chinese takeout drifted from the kitchen, along with a low hum of conversation. I took a deep breath and walked toward the sound, each step heavier than the last. When I rounded the corner into the kitchen, the sight in front of me froze me in place. Brianna and Caleb were sitting at my table, leaning in close to each other, laughing over a half-eaten meal. Caleb had his sleeves rolled up, a chopstick in hand, while Brianna sipped from a wine glass. There was an ease between them, the kind of comfort you don't have in someone else's home unless you've been there many times before. They both looked up at the same time and froze. Caleb's expression shifted quickly, like he was caught doing something he shouldn't, while Brianna's eyes widened in shock. "Oh, Ashley," Brianna said, forcing a laugh. "We were just stopping by." Her voice was light, but it carried an edge, like she was scrambling for an explanation. I stood there, unsure what to say. My heart was racing, but my face stayed neutral. I could feel Tessa and Brandon behind me, their presence making the whole scene even more surreal. Caleb cleared his throat and sat back in his chair, avoiding eye contact. Brianna glanced at the takeout containers, then back at me, like she was silently daring me to make it into a big deal. Tessa shifted uncomfortably, whispering something to Brandon. He gave her a small shake of the head, as if telling her not to get involved. The air was thick with awkwardness. The tenants didn't know where to stand, I didn't know what to say, and Brianna was pretending this was nothing out of the ordinary. I forced a polite smile toward Tessa and Brandon and said, "Let's go ahead and get those measurements done." But inside, I felt a knot tightening in my stomach that told me this was only the beginning. I tried to keep my face neutral as I led Tessa and Brandon into the living room, but my eyes kept drifting back toward the kitchen. Something about the scene I'd just walked in on didn't sit right. As I moved around, I started to notice details that made my stomach twist. 2 wine glasses sat on the table, one with a lipstick mark that definitely wasn't mine. Near them, a pair of half-burned candles flickered softly, candles I hadn't lit in weeks. They weren't even in the same spot I usually kept them. Someone had moved them closer to the table, creating a cozy, romantic setting. My gaze flicked back to Caleb. His shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, exposing more than just a casual looseness. It looked like he had been comfortable, too comfortable. Brianna's hair, normally neat and styled, was messy and tangled, like she had just run her hands through it a few too many times. The vibe between them was impossible to ignore, even if neither of them said a word about it. I tried to focus on the tenants' questions, measurements, outlet placements, window sizes, but my eyes kept catching other things. Near the couch, I spotted a man's jacket draped over the armrest. It wasn't mine. It wasn't even a brand I recognized. Then, as Tessa walked toward the hallway, I glanced in that direction and froze. My bedroom door was open. I knew I had left it closed. From where I stood, I could see the edge of my bed. The sheets were rumpled, like someone had been lying there recently. For a second, my mind refused to connect the dots. But the image of the wine glasses, the candles, Caleb's undone shirt, Brianna's messy hair, it all fell into place too neatly to ignore. The unease in my chest hardened into suspicion, and then into a quiet, simmering rage. Brianna must have caught the look on my face, because she spoke up suddenly. "We just came here to talk privately about the wedding," she said, her tone overly casual. "We didn't think you'd mind." "Talk privately? In my apartment? With wine, candles, and rumpled sheets?" I wanted to call her out right then and there, to demand answers in front of everyone. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I forced a small smile and said nothing. I walked with Tessa and Brandon as they finished their measuring, nodding absently at their comments. My hands felt cold, my jaw tight. Inside, though, my mind was racing. Every step I took in my own apartment suddenly felt foreign, like I was walking through a place I didn't fully recognize anymore. I didn't know exactly what had been happening here, but I knew one thing for certain: I was going to find out. As soon as Tessa and Brandon walked out the door, I closed it behind them and turned to face Brianna and Caleb. My heart was pounding, but my voice came out steady. "All right, what's going on here?" Brianna crossed her arms and gave me a look that was part irritation, part mock surprise. "Wow, Ash, you're really overreacting. You're making this so awkward." "Awkward," I repeated, feeling heat rise in my chest. You're in my apartment without permission, drinking my wine, lighting my candles, and I gestured toward my bedroom, clearly making yourselves comfortable in ways you shouldn't be. Caleb stepped in quickly, his voice defensive. We were just talking, okay? We had a little too much to drink, and we accidentally fell asleep for a bit. That's all. I stared at him, incredulous. Accidentally fell asleep? With candles burning, wine glasses out, and my bed looking like that. Brianna rolled her eyes, letting out an exasperated sigh. Ashley, seriously? You're acting like some detective in a bad crime show. We came here because we needed to talk privately about the wedding, away from Mom's constant interruptions. Is that a crime now? The more she spoke, the more I could feel my patience slipping. You could have gone anywhere. A coffee shop. His place. Literally anywhere but my home when I wasn't here. Her expression hardened. You've been acting so territorial lately. It's like you don't trust anyone. Maybe that promotion is making you paranoid. Or maybe you're just jealous. That last word hit like a slap. Jealous? I almost laughed at the absurdity of jealous of what exactly? Brianna shrugged, as if she'd made her point and didn't need to explain. You've always had a hard time when things are about me. You think the world revolves around your schedule. I glanced at Caleb, hoping for some sign that he'd at least acknowledge how inappropriate all of this was. But he just avoided my eyes, his jaw tight, as if he was silently siding with her. The urge to shout, to lay everything out in brutal detail, was overwhelming. But I swallowed it down. I could feel the anger boiling inside me, and I knew if I unleashed it now, I might never get the truth. So I took a slow breath, keeping my expression unreadable. Fine, I said quietly. If that's your story, stick to it. Brianna smirked, like she'd won some invisible argument, and grabbed her bag. Caleb followed her toward the door without another word. The moment it shut behind them, I stood in the silence of my apartment, my hands clenched into fists. I didn't believe a word they'd said. And no matter how long it took, I was going to find out exactly what they were hiding. Over the next week, I made a point of stopping by the apartment at random time. Partly, it was to keep packing little by little, but mostly, it was to see if anything felt off. I didn't announce when I was coming. I just showed up, key in hand, trying to catch the place exactly as it was when no one expected me. One afternoon, I opened the closet in my bedroom to grab a suitcase and froze. Hanging neatly on the rail between my winter coats was a men's jacket, dark blue, expensive looking. I knew it wasn't mine, and I certainly hadn't put it there. My first thought was that it must be Caleb's. The sight of it sitting there so casually, like it belonged, made my stomach knot. Later that same day, I ran into Mrs. Thompson again in the hallway. She greeted me with a smile but leaned in a little, lowering her voice. I saw that silver car again, she said, parked right out front. Same one I mentioned before. It was there a couple of times this week, but I didn't see you come or go. I knew Caleb drove a silver car. The image of it sitting outside my building while I was across town at work made my skin crawl. I nodded, thanking her, but inside my thoughts were racing. That night, I started replaying the last few months in my mind. There had been so many little things I brushed off at the time, moments that now felt like pieces of a bigger puzzle. Like the time Brianna and I were having coffee, and her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at the screen, snatched it up so quickly you'd think it was on fire, and excused herself to the bathroom. When she came back, she'd changed the subject without missing a beat. Or the time Caleb came over to help me move a bookshelf months ago. He walked straight to my kitchen and opened the cabinet with the wine glasses without me telling him where they were. At the time, I thought nothing of it. Maybe Brianna had told him. Now it felt different. He knew his way around my apartment a little too well. Even family dinners felt different in hindsight. I remembered how Caleb would sometimes ask, "You're going to be home later, right?" in this casual, throwaway tone. Back then, I assumed he was just making conversation. Now I wondered if he was actually trying to figure out when my place would be empty. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. The jacket, the car, the hidden texts, the comfort they showed in my home, none of it was innocent. They hadn't just stopped by. That day I walked in with Tessa and Brandon. They'd been using my apartment, and they'd been doing it for a long time. On the very last day before handing over my apartment keys to Tessa and Brandon, I stopped by to grab one final box I'd left in the bedroom closet. I expected the place to be empty, quiet, and ready for the new tenants. Instead, as soon as I unlocked the door, I heard raised voices coming from down the hall. I froze for a second, trying to place the sound. It was Brianna and Caleb, again. My pulse quickened as I stepped inside. The argument was coming from my bedroom. "You're making this worse." Brianna's voice was sharp, almost panicked. Caleb's reply was low but heated. "It wouldn't have happened if we'd just kept meeting here quietly. You're the one who let it get messy." The words hit me like a punch. Meeting here quietly. I stood in the doorway, unable to move, as the meaning sank in. They both turned when they saw me. Caleb's face went pale, while Brianna's eyes went wide, her lips parting like she wanted to explain, but didn't know where to start. Ashley, Brianna began, her voice cracking. I didn't say a word. I just looked at them, waiting. Brianna let out a shaky sigh, her shoulders slumping. Okay, she said finally. You deserve to know. Caleb and we've been seeing each other. For months. My stomach lurched. Here? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She nodded slowly, eyes glistening. Your apartment was it was private. No one would think to look here. We didn't mean for it to happen this way. I didn't mean to hurt you. Caleb shifted uncomfortably, staring at the floor. You didn't mean to hurt me? My voice came out sharper than I intended. You've been sneaking into my home. Lying to me. Behind my back. And you think this is something that just happened. Brianna swallowed hard, twisting her engagement ring around her finger. I was confused about the wedding. About everything. Caleb. He understood me in ways I didn't expect. I thought it would help me figure things out before making a huge mistake. I felt dizzy, my stomach churning. All the signs I'd ignored, all the excuses I'd believed, they were now standing right in front of me, undeniable. My home, my safe place, had been turned into their hiding spot for betrayal. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I could barely look at them. Every word they said felt like another twist of the knife. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just stepped back from the doorway, my hands trembling, and said, "Get out." They didn't argue. Caleb left first, silent and stiff, and Brianna lingered for a second, like she wanted to say something more. But when I didn't meet her eyes, she walked past me without another word. The moment the door closed, I sat down on the edge of my bed, feeling like the air had been sucked from the room. My chest was tight, my stomach sick, and one thought echoed in my head. I would never see them the same way again. After that final confrontation, I knew I could explode, tell everyone what they'd done, and cause a scene big enough to shake the whole family. But something in me decided against it. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing me fall apart. If they thought they'd gotten away with it, I could use that. So, I kept my voice calm, my expression neutral, and I finished moving out like nothing had happened. I boxed up the last of my things, took down the pictures from the walls, and left the apartment exactly as I'd promised the tenants it would. I didn't cancel the rental. Tessa and Brandon were still set to move in, and I had no intention of changing that. In fact, they became a quiet part of my plan. On the day I handed over the keys, I pulled them aside after the walkthrough. There's something you should know, I told them, my tone casual but firm. You might get an unexpected visit from my sister or her fiance. If they try to come in or use the place, please don't let them. And if it happens, call me immediately. Tessa's brows furrowed. Why would they? Long story, I cut in, offering a tight smile. Let's just say they're not welcome here anymore. Brandon exchanged a glance with her, then nodded. You can count on us. With that, I handed over the keys and walked away without looking back. From that point on, I began to quietly cut Brianna out of my life. I didn't block her. I didn't start fights. I just stopped showing up. Wedding planning events? I was busy with work. Dress fittings? Out of town. Family dinners? Not feeling well. My absence wasn't loud enough to draw immediate questions, but it was steady enough for her to notice. When she did reach out, her messages were short, almost like she was testing the waters. Hey, are you coming to the tasting next week? Mom wants to know if you'll be at the bridal shower. I replied with vague excuses, offering no real explanation. I wasn't going to give her the closure she might have been hoping for. The silence became my weapon. Every skipped event was a reminder that something had shifted, and she couldn't force me to play the role of supportive sister anymore. I didn't need a dramatic showdown in front of the family. The distance spoke for itself. Meanwhile, I settled into preparing for my new job and new city. I kept in touch with Tessa and Brandon occasionally, checking in to see how the apartment was treating them. They never mentioned any trouble, but I knew if Brianna or Caleb tried anything, I'd hear about it instantly. It wasn't loud or explosive revenge. It was quiet, controlled, and entirely mine. They had taken something from me, trust, comfort, my sense of home, but I wasn't going to let them take my dignity too. And nothing unnerved people like being shut out without a single word of explanation. Weeks slipped by, and the closer the wedding date came, the more certain I was about one thing. I wasn't going. I didn't need to see them standing together, pretending everything was perfect, while I sat in the crowd clapping like nothing had happened. My absence would be my message. Still, I couldn't resist sending a parting gift. A few days before the ceremony, I boxed up a framed photo of my old apartment, taken right before I moved out, everything neat and untouched. Tucked inside was a small note written in my neatest handwriting. Hope this place was worth it. I didn't sign my name. I didn't have to. 2 days later, I got a text from Tessa. You'll never believe who just showed up here. I immediately knew. She sent a second message a moment later. Your sister's fiance. He had a key and tried to let himself in, but obviously we're here now. He looked shocked, said he needed to check something. We told him he wasn't allowed in and asked him to leave. I couldn't stop the small, grim smile that tugged at my lips. I thanked her and put my phone down, already picturing Caleb's face when he realized their little hideout was gone for good. Later that night, I heard through a cousin, who was still on speaking terms with Brianna, that Caleb had confronted her about it. Apparently, he'd gone to the apartment expecting, who knows what? Privacy? A chance to reminisce? Whatever it was, finding strangers there had rattled him. He accused her of lying about something, and Brianna shot back that he was the one being careless. The argument had spiraled. According to my cousin, it got loud enough for her bridesmaids to overhear. Words like trust and secrets were tossed around, and at one point Caleb stormed out, saying he needed air. By the time the wedding day rolled around, the tension between them was obvious to anyone paying attention. I wasn't there to see it, but I didn't have to be. The updates came to me in little bursts from family, friends, and mutual acquaintances. Apparently, whispers started as soon as the ceremony began. Some guests noticed Caleb barely smiled during photos. Others claimed they'd seen Brianna's eyes rimmed red, as if she'd been crying that morning. At the reception, their interactions were stiff, polite, almost like two people who had just met rather than a newly married couple. It didn't take long for rumors to start floating around the room. A few brave guests asked outright if something had happened before the ceremony. Neither of them gave a straight answer, but their strained smiles told the story. Back in my new apartment, I poured myself a glass of wine and let the news wash over me. I didn't need to crash the wedding or make a scene. The damage had been done, and best of all, they'd done most of it to themselves. Months slipped by quietly, each one putting more distance between me and that old. I'd settled into my new city, found a job I actually enjoyed, and filled my weekends with friends who didn't carry hidden knives behind their backs. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, my phone buzzed with a call from my cousin Lila. She didn't waste time on small talk. "You're not going to believe this," she said. "Brianna and Caleb? Done. Completely. 6 weeks after the wedding." I leaned back in my chair, letting the words sink in. 6 weeks. Yep. Some big fight. She's been crashing at mom and dad's. Won't tell anyone the details, but you can imagine. I didn't say I could do more than imagine. I didn't need the play-by-play to know their marriage was probably built on the same shaky lies they told themselves while using my apartment as their secret meeting spot. Later that evening, the voicemail started. I didn't even have to check the caller ID to know it was her. The first one was shaky, her voice breaking mid-sentence. "Ash, I know you probably don't want to talk to me, but please just call me back. I need to explain." The next came the following day. More tears. "I messed up so badly. I didn't realize how much I'd lose. You're my sister. I love you. Please." I didn't listen to the rest. I deleted each one as soon as I heard her voice. She hadn't been thinking about sisters or love when she was locking the door behind Caleb in my apartment. And truthfully, I didn't need her explanation. The story was already written, and I'd lived it. By the time spring rolled around, my apartment in the city had begun to feel like mine in every sense. Not just a place I rented, but a safe space untouched by betrayal. The walls didn't carry their laughter, the bed didn't hold the shape of their lies, and the kitchen counter wasn't stained by their wine glasses. One sunny Saturday morning, I came home from a coffee run with a bag of fresh pastries. The air in my place smelled faintly of vanilla from a candle I'd left burning. I set the bag down, kicked off my shoes, and stood in the middle of my living room. It hit me then, the strange, bitter gift hidden in all of it. If I'd never rented out my old place, I might never have walked in that day, never have seen them sitting at my table like they owned it. I might never have known who they truly were. And knowing? That was worth more than keeping them in my life ever could have been. So, what's your take? Was Ashley right to cut Brianna out of her life completely, or should she have given her sister a chance to make things right? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'm curious to hear your perspective. And if you like dramatic, twist-filled stories like this, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so you'll always know when a new one drops.